Recording in progress.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nama budaya, salam kebajikan, and good afternoon ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Expert Insight and semangat pagi.
Pagi.
Okay, before we begin, I would like to introduce myself with pantun, as well as we're introducing pantun to our speaker. That is why I need help from Bapak Ibu to answer by saying cakep. Oke. Pergi ke Sleepy pakai celana. Pulangnya lewat jalan harmoni. Perkenalkan, saya Beatrix Vena. Pada hari ini siap menemani acara hari ini. Okay, before we begin today's agenda, I would like to welcome our esteemed guest of honor, to which we honor Bapak Didi Haryadi as OVP HCIAP, and of course to each and one of you today. Today, we are going to embrace remarkable expertise, knowledge, and insights that will undoubtedly inspire and enlighten us. First of all, before we begin, if this is your first time joining Expert Insight is a knowledge sharing program in the form of a regular webinar series organized by Telkom Corporate University for the Telkom Group, specifically and the learning community in Indonesia in general. As for today's Expert Insight episode, we will dive in depth to what we call as artificial intelligence, or we all know as AI. Despite our massive usage and dependency towards AI, have we all truly maximized AI's potential to stimulate Indonesia's development? Therefore, on today's Expert Insight, we have such an amazing speaker who's been working on AI's field for more than 25 years. Which is why, if you're wondering, don't forget to stay tuned on this program until the end. Alright, before we move to our main agenda, we will now watch a company profile video of Telkom Corporate University.
Dengan perkembangan teknologi yang kian pesat, khususnya teknologi digital, membawa kita memasuki era revolusi industri 4.0. Disrupsi yang ditimbulkan akibat perkembangan teknologi digital tersebut membawa perubahan yang signifikan di segala aspek kehidupan. Masa depan dunia akan ditentukan oleh kita yang menguasai teknologi dan berinovasi. Telkom Corpo hadir menjadi corporate university pertama di dunia yang mengintegrasikan learning, research, dan innovation, siap mendukung transformasi Telkom Group melalui program reskilling dan upskilling, serta mendukung pengembangan digital talent nasional dan kesiapan inovasi bangsa melalui kerjasama dengan Pentahelix. Pada aspek learning, Telkom Corpo mengembangkan talentanya dengan metode dynamic curriculum, yaitu formula 70% experiential learning, 20% social learning, dan 10% formal learning. Telkom Corpo juga secara resmi menjadi pemegang sertifikasi BNSP, sehingga tidak hanya mendeliver konten, tetapi juga memvalidasi kompetensi. Pada aspek research, Telkom Corpo mengembangkan riset sesuai dengan pain problems yang dirasakan oleh user, untuk menemukan solusi yang tepat dengan memanfaatkan teknologi yang tersedia, sehingga dapat mendorong talenta untuk menghasilkan inovasi yang sesuai dengan kebutuhan. Pada aspek innovation, talenta Telkom Corpo dapat mewujudkan idenya melalui tahapan 5D, yaitu define, design, development, deployment, dan diffusion. Talenta Telkom Corpo dibimbing mulai dari mengusung ide inovasi hingga menyebarkan manfaat inovasinya kepada internal dan eksternal Telkom. Proses tersebut dikemas di dalam Innovation Center yang menerapkan konsep living lab di mana inovator dan juga player dapat sama-sama belajar dan berkembang, Sehingga Indosen menjadi suatu ekosistem yang mendorong inovator dapat terus mengembangkan inovasinya sesuai dengan feedback serta kebutuhan dari market. Dalam mengintegrasikan ketiga aspek tersebut, Telkom Korpu telah membangun dasar sistem yang akan tetap berkelanjutan sepanjang masa. Telkom Korpu juga mengemban amanah untuk menyukseskan transformasi Telkom Group yaitu 5 Bold Moves, khususnya dari sisi kesiapan talent. Untuk mendukung keberhasilan 5 Bold Moves tersebut, Telkom Korpu telah menyiapkan body of knowledge untuk setiap pilar Bold Moves yang terdiri dari FMC, B2B Services, Data Center Ecosystem, Infraco, dan Digico. Selain mendukung kesiapan talent di internal Telkom Group, Telkom Korpu juga ikut andil dalam pengembangan digital talent dan inovasi dari Pentahelix. Terbukti pada tahun 2023, Telkom Korpu sudah menggelar training programs, published researches, dan innovations go-to-market or operation baik untuk internal perusahaan maupun Pentahelix. Telkom Korpu juga dipercaya oleh berbagai partner di lingkup Pentahelix sebagai tempat benchmark dengan tujuan membantu talent development dan kesiapan inovasi dari institusi Pentahelix tersebut. Kerjasama dengan institusi di Pentahelix melahirkan berbagai layanan yang dikembangkan oleh Telkom Korpu. Di antaranya berupa learning solutions, research solutions, dan innovation solutions. Berbekal komitmen dan dukungan dari Telkom serta seluruh partner dari Pentahelix, di tahun 2023, Telkom Korpu berhasil meraih penghargaan baik di tingkat nasional maupun internasional. Pada event Global CTO Award Ceremony, Telkom Korpu diakui sebagai corporate university pertama di dunia yang memiliki unique position dengan mengintegrasikan learning, research, dan innovation. Dengan perjalanan yang sudah dilalui, Telkom Korpu telah mendapatkan banyak masukan untuk terus meningkatkan kapabilitas dan layanannya. Telkom Korpu berkomitmen untuk terus menjadi lebih baik demi mendukung terciptanya kemandirian teknologi Indonesia. Marilah kita wujudkan kemandirian teknologi bangsa ini melalui kesiapan digital talent, pengelolaan riset, serta pengembangan inovasi bersama Telkom Korpu.
Ladies and gentlemen, we just watched company profile video of Telkom Corporate University. Moving on, we will now move to the next agenda, which is welcoming speech from Mr. Muhammad Subhan Iswahyudi as Telkom Corporate University Senior General Manager, which will be represented by Mr. Arif Hamdani Gunawan as Coordinator Group of Expert Telkom Corporate University. Please give round of applause for Mr. Arif, and to the honor Mr. Arif, the time and place is yours.
Semangat pagi. Ya, thank you Mr. Professor Philip Parker. Ya, it's an honor for us to have you. Ya, makasih teman-teman semua sudah hadir. Kita langsung akan mendengarkan AI ya di kehidupan sehari-hari. Sekarang kita nggak bisa lepas dengan AI ya. AI dalam arti sebenarnya gitu ya, bukan dalam arti yang artificial gitu ya, buat-buatan gitu ya. AI akan memudahkan kita di dalam melakukan pekerjaan, tetapi juga tidak hanya itu, akan membuat revenue generator yang baru. Ya. Tadi saya barusan joke gitu ya, ketika pagi tadi ya dengan orang kementerian, ya, sorry, Indonesia. Saya diskusi, ternyata PowerPoint kita sudah canggih ya, bisa pakai AI untuk mendeteksi kesehatan. PowerPoint can use to detect the health using the AI or not? Ya, I can prove it ya. Jadi power bank bisa untuk mendeteksi kesehatan, ya. Tapi ini pelesetannya AI, ya. Bukan pakai AI, ya. Jadi ketika power bank di charge nggak penuh-penuh itu ternyata kesehatan kita turun. Bener nggak Bang Richard? Ternyata bener. Kenapa? Karena kalau power bank kita di charge nggak penuh-penuh, biasanya ke charge-nya malam. Berarti kita istirahatnya kurang. Istirahatnya mungkin kurang dari 4 jam, kurang dari 3 jam. Itu menyebabkan kita nggak sehat, ya. But this is artificial, not really AI. So dalam siang ini kita akan mendengar apa yang dimaksud dengan AI, ya. Bagaimana itu menjadi bisnis dan apa itu challenge bagi company dan bagi negara, ya. Oke, mungkin itu saja, ya. Selamat menikmati dan semoga ini memberikan manfaat bagi kita semua. Terima kasih.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, can we please give a round of applause for Mr. Ari? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ari, for the heartwarming welcoming speech. Moving on, we will move to the next agenda, which obviously is the most awaited session. Therefore, let's give round of applause for our moderator, Mr. Hamzah Asaduddin, who will lead the next session. To Mr. Hamzah, the time and place is yours.
Terima kasih Bapak Ibu sekalian yang sudah menyempatkan hadir pada siang hari ini. Pada siang hari ini kita akan membahas tentang generative AI ya. Jadi satu topik yang sangat hot banget di dunia ini saat ini. Tapi seringkali kita mungkin ke bawah hype gitu ya. Wah AI kayak keren gitu. Pokoknya apa-apa harus pakai AI gitu kan. Padahal sebetulnya salah satu pendapatnya Prof. Philip ini, sebenarnya seringkali perusahaan itu menggunakan AI hanya untuk meningkatkan valuasi mereka gitu di mata investor. Nah, jadi salah satu pembicara kita pada hari ini luar biasa, beliau menarik sekali. Beliau adalah salah satu chairman di INSEAD, sehingga kemudian saya sudah lihat worknya beliau, sangat banyak tentang AI. Beliau lebih dari 20 tahun mempelajari AI. Dan salah satu hal yang teman-teman bisa pelajari kalau nanti sempat pulang gitu ya YouTubean, itu materi beliau tentang demystifying AI gitu. Jadi beliau sangat paham gitu kan, bagaimana AI itu sebetulnya bisa digunakan dalam kehidupan sehari-hari, baik itu dalam corporate maupun dalam kehidupan kita gitu. Nah pada hari ini kita akan membahas lebih banyak tentang bagaimana AI itu bisa digunakan di Indonesia gitu, untuk memajukan Indonesia sebagai sebuah negara yang sedang berkembang, bisa menjadi negara maju. Nah harapannya itu akan kita kupas tuntas pada siang hari ini. Silahkan teman-teman nanti kalau ada pertanyaan, pastikan teman-teman catat dan nanti bisa ditanyakan langsung kepada Prof. Philip. Mumpung beliau lagi di Indonesia ini, jadi kesempatan yang sangat langka, tapi sangat baik bagi kita semuanya. Okay, so today we have a special speaker, which is Professor Phillips. He has a PhD in Business Economics from the Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania from the US. He also has experiences as the Chair Professor of Management Science from INSEAD. As you may know, it's one of the most renowned universities or institutions in the world. He is a professor in marketing. He developed advanced educational platforms to create the INSEAD Management Dashboard, launched literacy initiatives based on his consultations with the World Bank, collaborated with various projects sponsored by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This is quite prestigious foundation. He also has clients with Google, Jordan, Tata Group, Citibank, ABB, and many more. Okay, so without further ado, please, Professor Phillips, can you go up to the podium? Yeah, thank you. You can sit down. Please. Ya, silakan, teman-teman bisa tepuk tangan. Okay, so Professor, we're really glad to have you here with us. So we have in our audience a mix of senior leaders from Telkom Group, and also we have enthusiasts of AI within our AI community within Telkom Group. So this is a mix of audience, and they're really willing to hear what you have to say about AI.
Okay, very good. Am I on right now? Is this working? Not sure.
Okay.
Swap this out. Thank
for your patience. Good afternoon, everyone. Very good.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do this afternoon is I'm going to speak to the evolution of artificial intelligence and how it's been evolving and how it can affect the telco industry. As you folks know, your industry had an interesting boom growth period, right, during the 1990s, 2000s, et cetera. But the revenue growth and the ARPUs have kind of flattened out, right? The revenue growth is kind of stabilized for both voice and data, and it's not like 6G or 7G is going to save the day necessarily. I've been working in the telecom industry on with artificial intelligence since the 1980s. I developed a cell site optimization model on how to locate cell towers and things like that. And I've seen various aspects of your industry go through cycles of investments in various areas. For example, maybe we should be in the content industry. Maybe we should not be in the content industry. Maybe we should be in the content industry and go in waves that way. And I think what's interesting worldwide in our industry, given that revenue and growth in both data and in voice have kind of saturated, everyone's looking for that high growth rate for the next generation. What's it going to be? Because often shareholders are demanding that good old growth that you used to have. So the question is, what will that thing be? And will AI and all these different tools come about actually give you an opportunity to play in that space in an effective way? So what I'm going to do is give you some background on the subject area. What are some of the innovations going on in that area? I'm going to do some online demos Zoom to show you some of what's going on with permission.
Okay, that's really good. I mean, sometimes when we talk about AI, people just taken by the hype. They just understand what AI by the hype. I think from your material that I've read online, you've actually broken down, how AI can be used specifically for a company, and in 20 years' time, people just say that it's just another algorithm.
Yeah, that's basically it. There's four branches of AI. So when someone says artificial intelligence, what are they talking about? There's actually four distinct branches with very different skill sets. Branch number one is robotics, using machines that imitate human behavior that reduces production costs. So Eli Whitney had the cotton gin that allowed people to separate the seed from the fiber into 2 piles, right? That increased productivity in the cotton industry. The cost of cotton went down. Textile industry grew, right? Henry Ford had automated factories, which increased the productivity of factories, reducing the cars and automobiles. The automobile industry grew, right? These were robotic innovations, right? My generation had the pocket calculator. Remember the pocket calculator? It could, in 1972, calculate a square root. That was amazing. It could do it fast. As far as we know, we're the only species on the planet that does square roots. What's the square root of 81? You guys tell me. What is it? How do you know? You have no clue. No, you're intelligent, obviously, right? You're intelligent. You figured it out in your heads, right? Back in 1972, when the first commercial calculators came out, people looked at them and go, oh my gosh, this thing is dangerous, this AI. And they banned it from schools. Anyone old enough to remember when they banned calculators from schools? The kids aren't going to learn anything. You've got to ban this technology. How many people today look at a pocket calculator and go, man, that's cool, AI. Nobody does. This is called, as I refer to it, the AI effect. What people call today AI, 20 years from now, they'll look back and just go, wow, it's just a dumb piece of software. Okay? And I think my favorite example is in the 1920s, when people were amazed by the AI in the 1920s. Do you remember how people used to do toast? It was always burning. And then they had this automatic toaster. You put the bread in the toaster, you push it down, and it knows when to pop back up. Amazing AI. How does it know when to pop the toast? Okay? So over the years, there's many different AIs. The first group, robotics. The second group is called cognitive computing or symbolic computing. That's the second area of AI. It's largely rule-based. Pocket calculators are rule-based. You don't want the calculator to learn anything based on users using it, right? That'd be dangerous, right? You might remember IBM Watson. This was a big AI initiative by IBM. It was answering trivia questions. It could learn facts about the world. IBM Watson was purely rule-based, based on what's called natural language programming, right? Purely rule-based. Then you had something called Deep Blue. This was a computer that beat Gary Kasparov, a grand chess master. All rule-based. These are narrow forms of AI, very narrow. The computer that could play chess could not write a poem. Every piece of AI usually has a very narrow focus. The third branch of AI is when you don't know the rules of AI. You just don't know the rules. So you let the data do the talking. Maybe we can learn what the rules are. By feeding it enough data, we'll be able to figure out what the right segmentation structure is for mobile phone users. Maybe we use enough data, we can figure out how to credit score a SIM card for micro-lending, things like that, building probability defaulting. Let the data do the talking. This was called machine learning or computational machine learning. How many of you guys in the audience here have a lot of people on Zoom? How many of you guys have ever sorted a spreadsheet from high to low? Anyone use a spreadsheet sorted high to low? Big accounts, middle and small? Anybody do that? Raise your hand. Anybody do that? Yeah, that's called unsupervised machine learning. Update your resume. If you ever do a little scatter diagram, you do a scatter diagram, X and Y, you draw a line through it to show that you went to a stats class, you'll put an R squared. Any of you guys do that before? Raise your hand. Who's done a scatter diagram on a spreadsheet? Yeah. That's supervised machine learning. Update your resume. Basically, a lot of people have renamed things we already know, and they relabel them so they can charge you more money. It's a largely vendor-driven industry at this point. Do you remember the Y equals A plus X? Remember that a line? Y used to be called the dependent variable, now it's called the output. Do you remember the A equation was the intercept of a line? No, it's called the bias now. Do you remember the B? That used to be called the slope of a line. Do you remember that? No, it's called weight now. Do you remember the X? That used to be called what? The independent variable. Now it's called what? Input. Do you remember in my day when the dots didn't fit the line, it was called the residual, right? And we put a little epsilon there. Epsilon kind of gets like an E. So now it's called the error. Do you remember how sometimes curves are like this? Right? They're curvy, so you put an exponent, you square the x. Remember that? That's called a hyperparameter. A lot of what's going on in AI is reinventing the wheel from decades ago and reselling it to people. So AI is extremely old. That the third branch, that's just good old-fashioned curve fitting. The most elaborate called deep learning neural networks fitting multiple curves to a data set to help you improve predictability. Right? So those kinds of algorithms have been around since about the year 1982. What's happened is the cost of the GPUs has plummeted so much. Where are you guys? Raise your hands here if you make Grand Theft Auto. Who's played GTA? Shame on you. It turns out that you guys use graphics cards heavily, right? You bought these big rigs, you're very proud of it. Eventually we had blockchain, and a bunch of hackers realized you can use the graphics processing unit to do Bitcoin mining, right? Because you could do that, NVIDIA noticed, that's interesting. They're using our graphics cards for something other than frame rates. They're using it to mine Bitcoin to solve a mathematical problem. NVIDIA created a little layer of software called CUDA that allowed anyone to access a graphics card. And all of a sudden, Bitcoin miners realized that if they upgraded the speed on their graphics card, they could swap out the existing graphics cards and get more profit. What did they do with the used graphics cards? that they no longer needed, they put them on eBay. And a lot of doctoral students realized, hey, we can hack this graphics card to solve a neural network. And all of a sudden in the last 5 years, the cost of people entering this business has plummeted. That's why I have so many people attending the Zoom meeting here. The last time I noticed that over there was 500 people are online right now, Zoom. The reason we're here today is because this gentleman over here played GTA 10 years ago because it required graphics cards. So graphics cards has made it very accessible now to do a lot of fancy things. The only reason we have large language models is, and that takes 4,000 graphics cards to train a large language model, it was inconceivable 15 years ago for lack of graphics cards. Now that's gone down in price. What else has gone down in price is the software. My generation and a few other people with gray hair here, or no hair, we had these packages called SAS and SPSS and TSP, very expensive software. Academics hated paying money, we're cheap. So we started programming R, a computer package called R. And then Google launched something called Python, both free. Python's great at neural network. R is good at other kinds of analyses. Now the software is free, the graphics cards are cheap. Man, we're in business. So now the question becomes for you folks, so what? That's the problem. I tell people, if you can't either increase revenues or cut cost, don't invest a dime. Because this can go crazy. How many of you have ever heard, you have CDRs and EDRs, right? Call detail records, event detail records. You have massive data lakes, right? After you spend $100 million cleaning up the data lake, then someone says, I wonder how we'll monetize it. Usually it's the other way around. If you're gonna be an AI, know the killer app first, then invest. And that's one of the dilemmas people have. Gen AI is interesting, but how can I make a business model out of it? And I think that's where the challenge is. Those three branches, robotics, cognitive computing, rule-based like calculators, statistical methods, and the last branch of AI is called machine learning control. What is that all about? An autopilot in an airplane, don't fly too high, don't fly too low. Fly at what? The profit maximizing altitude. This is actually a shareholder model. The autopilot, but it has to be safe. There are ethical boundaries on machine learning control. Don't fly too high, don't fly too low, just fly at the right level. Suppose you have a perfect forecasting model for stocks. You know the stock price, you know what it's gonna be. How many stocks should you buy? Well, if you buy too few, you didn't take advantage of it. But if you buy too many, what happens? You change the stock market price. So there's an optimal number of things to do. How many of you dream one day of having a mobile phone, turning it on, putting it on a table, and your bank account goes up? I want that software. Okay? So it's all about coming up with the right application across the 4 branches. The reason we don't have surgeons, medical doctors operating on us, it's clear. You need the robotics, right? They would have to follow certain rules. Do you agree? There's certain rules in medicine. But there's also statistics that tell you that certain techniques are better than others. And by the way, there's control. Not too much oxygen, not too little oxygen. All 4 branches have to be implemented. That's why doctors are not threatened by AI. Especially surgeons. If your job is sitting in front of a computer screen all day clicking, your job is at risk. Because if that's all you're doing, people are going to come up with, in fact, that's my job since I've been at INSEAD, I don't want to say too long, 30 plus years. My research has been writing algorithms to replace people like you. But right now my sights are set on other industries, and I'll do a few demos, like McKinsey and Company, or other kind of firms. What can you use to do really disruptive things to certain industries? And then how maybe a telco might actually compete in that space. So there's the 4 branches, and yes, my perspective is there's so much hype in everything. You have to back up and just say, well, what is this AI stuff? Well, there's 4 types. Which type do you want to play in? What business model are you going to do? And where's the revenue stream? And is the customer going to pay cash, credit, or check? And is there value created? What's interesting about you as a telecommunications company, you're at the nexus of people arbitraging in this area. So really you're facing a question. Do you want to play or not? It's a strategic question. You have 4 options. Number 1, ignore it. Okay? Just let life go on. Option number 2, you can adapt as needed. Translation, you become a vendor manager. So many companies are using SAP. Do you guys use SAP? Yes. What's your switching cost, high or low? Infinite. You now work for SAP. That's what happens when you adapt to the environment. You wait for the environment to shape. The third, you can reserve the right to play. You invest just enough so that if something happens, you can be there. Kind of build a little muscle in an area. Your last option is to shape the future. You basically say, I'm going to change the game for a lot of people. This is a very senior executive decision to be made. Are we going to exit? Are we going to just adapt? Are we going to reserve the right to play, just get enough knowledge to do stuff? Or are we going to shape the future? So what I wanted to do is, in the time that we have, is give you a few demos online, if that's okay. If that's okay?
Yeah, that's okay, fine.
We're all set?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to migrate over here. Thank you, I don't want to abandon you, but I'm going to abandon you, okay? And I'm going to walk over here to my laptop. For those of you, I have a screen share going on here, I hope, that'll broadcast things. And I'm going to get a new microphone here. I'm going to show you what our lab's been up to. I had a lab of 18 engineers and 2 editors. And over the years, I've been working on generative AI applications. Yeah, I'm going to abandon this one. If I can hand this to you, thank you, ma'am. Okay. All right, so here we go. All right, this one needs to be turned on. It's not turned on right now, please. No, this one's not on. Okay, can you guys hear me? In the back? It is on. Okay, excellent. So at INSEAD, I have 18 engineers, all dedicated to artificial intelligence, right? In the year 2000, we created high-end industry studies that were actually bought and sold and are still available today through various vendors. You've heard of Capital IQ, Standard & Poor's, Bloomberg, these kind of trading platforms where businesses buy and sell stocks and things like that. And so I created algorithms in the year 2000 that would create high-end industry studies. I'm going to do a screen share and just show you one of them so people can see what I'm referring to. Let me go here. This is a study for Boeing Corporation about who they should buy and sell across the world. So we've been doing this since about the year 2000. This is a 173-page report for Boeing Corporation about who they should buy, who they should sell, what kind of investment opportunities there are, a full-blown methodology. If they buy some companies, it might be illegal because they're too competitive with Boeing. So the way the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, evaluates mergers and acquisitions is you cannot be too close to Boeing in this kind of map. If Boeing's in the middle, companies they can acquire might be company G, F, H, and I. So we have an algorithm called supervised machine learning that actually gives the map that shows you companies that maybe Boeing should potentially acquire. This is a C-suite report, very high-end. And we've been doing this for about 20 or 30 years now. These high-end industry studies, and I even have a patent on this technology. It's from the year 2000. If any of you guys want to read the most absurd patent ever written, type in the name Parker, automated authoring patent. So my patent will be the very first listing there. It's so crazy, it claimed the use of algorithms to create anything humans can create. Movies, textbooks, articles in newspapers, newspapers themselves, any content humans can create, my patent covered everything. I never enforced the patent. In the year 2007, I was awarded the patent. There was a big article in the New York Times and Huffington Post talking about a crazy professor in a lab generating automatically books. At that time, we had 200,000 titles on Amazon. Today, we're up to 1.6 million titles we've produced. I earned quite a bit of profits from these Boeing kind of studies that I'm showing you here. Quite a bit of profit from that. And with the excess profits, I created textbooks and language learning books. How many of you, raise your hands, if you've been to the United States, a bookstore in the United States? Anyone here been to a bookstore in the United States? You might have noticed there's a huge self-help section. It's massive. Americans don't know what to do, so they buy a self-help book. You go to a French bookstore and you notice there's less self-help books. Not because the French know what they're doing, it's because less people speak French. So the profits of publishing in the French language kind of suck. Italian, it's worse. Arabic, it's a disaster. African languages, nothing is published. Right? It's terrible. So from the profits of these industry studies, I pivoted and created language learning books for dialects in Africa and places like this, or Rotary International, it's a club, was distributing these things still today, and Amazon created a nice waxy cover so rain would wash off because children were walking from their homes to the schools and wanted to make sure kids had educational materials. When I got the patent in 2008, INSEAD, for whatever reason, sent out a press release, and they basically told the world about what I was doing. And I was interviewed by the who's who, Wired Magazine, Business Week, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and I was bombarded with requests from all over the world. I decided to release my patent to the public, never charged anybody for it. The first applications were the Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones, who did financial news articles starting in 2010. Many people think that generative technology is now affecting news. It already did, and that was 15 years ago. So there's already been a lot of generative content out there. I started working with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, creating a lot of content engines that algorithmically create content, massive amounts of content. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of that. What do content engines look like? How can they be used? And I'm going to give you many examples. Then we'll have a little Q&A. So let me bounce over here. This was one of the first applications we had for the biodiversity market. This is from, again, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I'm sorry the screen here in the television is chopping this off. But on this side here where I'm highlighting, over here, way over here, this is Zea maize. It's a corn. It's corn, basically. And these are rating systems for corn, written by an algorithm. Basically, there were scientists that were spending a year to summarize 100 plant species manually. That's what they were doing, 100 plant species. There are 1.2 million plant species. How long would it take them to finish this job? A century. So, 15 years ago, the Gates Foundation gave us some money, said, hey, can you help these scientists summarize plants? I said, sure. So in about 10 months or so, we actually did 1.2 million plant species. These are the rating systems. This plant here, corn, has high level of food security. You see 4 stars there. Wait, you can look at my cursor there at the bottom. In terms of medicinal use, it's 3 stars. In terms of stimulant use, 1 star. So don't smoke corn. You're not going to get high from corn. Not much action there. Once we knew how things were rated, we could generate profiles of each one of these plants. And this came out with a summary. Now at the top is an executive summary, is what you would expect. At the bottom, what you see are all the sources that were used, the provenance of the information. A lot of people get very nervous about AI. Is it doing something crazy? Is it hallucinating, right? That kind of thing. So in our projects, we're not allowed to have errors, right? When you tell a farmer to plant something 6 inches apart, when it should be 3 inches, you can starve people. So we did not allow errors to creep into the system. So when we made a conclusion about the chromosome number, we made sure that you could click and see the provenance of where the data came from. So it's not a black box. So we created this portal for biodiversity. It's an example of a content engine. It's doing the work that humans would never be able to get to. Nobody was fired because we did this portal. It's doing works humans wouldn't be able to do, in fact. Let me give you another example. If you type in a big number like that in Google in Indonesia, it gives me one result with the word bazaar on it. I put this other number in here, and it says no results found. What you're experiencing is what 3.6 billion people in the world experience today. If someone in Africa who speaks Kikuyu types in the word lump in breast, and they do this on Google, there's no results found. Why? Nothing's published in Kikuyu. You go to Swahili, no results found. Why? Because Swahili only has 10,000 articles on Wikipedia compared to what? 6.5 million articles in English. There's no Balinese Wikipedia articles on lump in breast. So then you have to go to English, and there's a lot of content, but it's not localized to where you live. It's generic, right? So this is we call the content divide. If you go to the value chain of content to Wikipedia, what you see is, a content producer using manual labor. You type in a big number and there's no results found. But there is a result for the number 66. Okay. I'm far from my keyboard here. All right, so here it goes. I'm going to move this over a little bit. That's good. I can get close to the keyboard. And you'll notice that some human beings out there wrote this article about the number 66. You're bored on the weekend, right? And you're going to notice here on the side, it's in 73 languages, but in Bahasa, in Malaysian, right? It's one line. That's all you get is one line. 66 is between 65 and 67. Can you believe a human wrote that, right? So it doesn't have all numbers, and it's not the same content across languages. When I type a common word, like page there, but if I type in peeling, there's no page. It goes to the word peel. So not all verbs are covered in Wikipedia. Now, if ChatGPT or other things are trained Wikipedia and what's on the internet, how can it have good knowledge about, Indonesia? It turns out that the internet is biased towards 3 geographies. Those geographies are California, New York, and London. There'll be an article about Half Moon Bay, a bay near San Francisco. But what about all the bays of Indonesia? There'll be an article about a restaurant in New York City. Why not every restaurant on the planet, right? There's an article about an obscure song by a rock group in the 1960s called Let It Be, right? What about all the songs of Indonesia? Why don't they have Wikipedia pages? Why? Because you guys are too busy to volunteer typing on Wikipedia, right? You don't have time for this crazy stuff. Well, what if an algorithm could mimic a Wikipedia author? So this is a project that's now been in working for about 5 years now. We're going to be launching it this year coming up. We have 2,000 users on this project. It's called Botopedia. I'm going to type in a number, it doesn't matter what the number is, and it's going to use natural language understanding to author a Wikipedia page on the fly. So this is not using a large language model, by the way, right? It's using a mix of rule-based and non-rule-based. Our primary curator is a mathematician. It said if you're going to write a page about a number, it had better follow this. Remember this in high school when you learned about whole numbers, decimal numbers, integers, prime numbers, pseudo-prime numbers, complex numbers, partitions of a number, the Bernoulli transformation, exchange rate differences, conversion rates. Because the computer doesn't know what it's doing, I can easily flip this to any language. This is Amharic, an Ethiopian language, and it'll simply craft it in that language. Now, if you get a linguist who looks at this computer translation, they will then edit it and make it better. It saves the cost of creating this template, right? So it drives production cost of content down to the price of electricity, basically. Many cultures don't have a word for integer, so a direct translation may not make any sense. This is an example of one template, numbers. What if I had a different template, like music? Turns out there's no music search engine on Google. Have you ever noticed that? There's videos, images, why not music? The reason is they want you to go to YouTube so they can monetize a music video. It's a commercial decision. So our curator, this professional musician, said, can you actually create one page per song? Well, I type in Thunderstruck. I'm dating myself. This is ACD, 1970s and 80s, right? These are all the songs related to Thunderstruck. If I'm not sure if that song is the one that I wrote, I can simply look at it and play it over the air, basically. Oh, there you go. You can hear it. There you go. Okay. As a template, every known song gets paid from. Another one, our historian said, it would be really nice to have every known image, no matter where the image is from. As you know, most governments have national archives. Photography started around 1850s or so, and we deep harvested. It took 3.5 years. Every government archive of photography from the beginning of photography. So this is a photographic essay of a given word over time. The word is submarine. It's a pontoon company at the beginning, a float plane, and then World War II broke out, and we end up getting what? Fighter aircraft, etc. We're talking hundreds of millions of different pages. Let's say Amber and I get married. Amber is working with me from INSEAD, and I'm going to write the word. I'm going to go over here and say Amber and I have a baby, Amber Parker. We put a name. There is no Amber Parker. So it says Amber Parker can be the name of one or more individuals, fictional, deceased, living, or yet to be born. And then it says, well, therefore, there's a probability that it's a, yes, you're going to switch this. Go for it. Yeah, no problem. Little tech upgrade. I'm going 5G here. All right, 4G to 5G. Sweet. Awesome. All right, how's that? Is that better for you guys? Is that good? You can hear me in the back? I'll just scream my lungs out. So it looks like it's Amber Parker's the name, not Parker Amber. 92% probability. Probably a female. Probably heterosexual. Probably not very common naming. Probably lives in the United States, UK, or Australia. Probably white. Probably Christian. Brown, black, or gray hair. Donates to both Democrats and Republicans. And probably genes came out of Africa, through the Middle East, up to the UK, a little bit of Viking DNA, and then spread across the world that way. This person doesn't exist. But you guys know in marketing, if you got a first and last name, I can tell you something about that person. Their origin, their income, and many other things, right? And you can read even more about this person by hitting read more, and it'll tell you everything more about them. If I wanted to know who the most important Ambers are in the world, I can simply go like this, take out the word name, and I put in the word Twitter. And now I've got one article per Twitter account. These are all, this is the major influencers. Here's accountants, activists, actors, artists, bloggers, business people, chefs, Christians, designers, engineers, experts, fans. You get the idea, right? And then for each one of them, I click on this, and here's a full-blown page about that person, diagnosing them. We've done it for all 30 social media things, ResearchGate, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, boom, everybody. Wikipedia has 6.5 million articles. This has 400 billion articles. It's bigger than the entire internet combined if I included numbers. Okay? And then you're going to say, well, how often is it updated? Let me put the word, I don't know, let's do something controversial here. Who is Donald Trump? You ever heard of this Donald Trump guy? Okay? Let's do Donald Trump. And it'll write an article about, I'm going to admit whoever that person is. Who is Donald Trump? Well, there's many perspectives on Donald Trump. This is what he wrote about himself. Here's from Conservapedia, completely different source, etc. What if I want to know about Donald Trump from a news perspective, right? You know, from a news perspective, who is this Donald Trump guy? I have to block that. You're going to notice there's a little slider. Oh, he's controversial. The left-wing news reports him very different than the right-wing news. So in real time, I can actually look at the same subject from multiple perspectives. What you've just observed is the user changing the algorithm. So I'm going to try to pitch you on an idea. There's a content engine that can create more content in any language than that language has ever seen. But who cares if you can't find it? Let's add discoverability, search. So rather than a search engine of existing content, why not a content engine that you can search on? And then it still includes local websites. The example I like using is coffee. I typed in the word coffee. It has normal things about coffee, but there might be people called coffee, like Brian Coffee, Darian Coffee, etc. But I'm not going to focus on people's names. I'm going to go down here to the advice section, way down here. This is the advice given by people across the internet on coffee. Do you notice there's a density function here? For you guys in the telco engineering, that's the network of knowledge. These are nodes in a network. When I say coffee, what's the most important phone number being called? It's food. Do you see that number food with 156? So coffee is mostly associated with food, but it can be associated with fashion. The word fashion is right there. I click it, and you're going to see that coffee is associated with not just food, but things like, I'm trying to move the share screen here because I can't see. Oh, I have to admit someone to move that away. Alternative fasting, body piercing, costumes, fashion, handbags. How many of you think of the word body piercing when you think of coffee? Nobody does, right? What you're looking at is a graph. Coffee goes to fashion, fashion goes to body piercing goes back to coffee. Don't drink coffee before you get your ears pierced. How do we know that? Well, if you don't believe it, here's the provenance of where that came from. There's no hallucination. There it is. There's the expert. All right, I want you to imagine I have an n-dimensional graph of every known subject to and from every known subject, and the graph is dynamic. It's alive. More stuff is coming in nonstop. But I let you have the power of the graph. You get to put pins in the graph. I'm interested in fashion, Buddhism, and fly fishing. And you let yourself search the content graph space. To show you an example of that, people always say, can you contrast this with Google? I'm sitting in Telkom Indonesia right now. That's where I am right now. I type in Christina in Google and I look at images here. What do you guys see? You see page after page of Christina Aguilera. Do you notice that? I type in the word dentist here. Dentist, right? Page after page of stock images from dentists. All right? I type in the word lawyer. What do I see? Stock images of lawyers, right? That's what I see. I type in the word, I'm just going to use a fun one for me, Nina. It's a Canadian actress. I type in the name Ben, and I get what? Some cartoon character. I'm in frickin' Indonesia. This is what I see, right? Now, imagine I let you put pins in the graph, and I change the style sheet from Wikipedia to a search engine. So here's an example. This is discoverability. I have one called okla.sg. Do you guys like that name? That's all they say in that country. Okla. All the time, right? Okay, okla. All right. And then I type in the word Christina. I'm putting a pin in the graph. It's not a keyword. It's the graph of the community around Singapore, right? It's not a keyword. I type in Christina, and you get what? Kind of different results. It doesn't look like Christina Aguilera. Sorry about the latency here. I'm on Wi-Fi here, so here it goes. Usually it pops in. So can you see the difference? Before it was Christina Aguilera wall to wall. You know, if I type in something like lawyer, what do you expect to see? The most famous lawyer, Lee Kuan Yew, right? And then a bunch of other lawyers that are serving the Singaporean community. I type in the word dentist, and what should I see? Well, probably dentists. I was at the Minister of Digital Transformation in Malaysia, and I said, here's a simple question for you. Do you want more or less clicks on the companies in your country? If you do, you cannot outsource your search engine to somebody else. More so, what if I want to give the control of the search engine parameters to the end users themselves? This is an example where I type in the word BASS, a different one. This one's called Yet Wave. That means something to the North American culture. I'm getting a latency here that's usually not this slow. I'm not sure what's going on. And basically, you get, I typed in the word BASS. Is that a guitar, a bass guitar, or is it bass a fish? If you don't have control of the engine, it will tell you what it thinks you should know, right? But the reality is maybe I'm a mathematician. I'm going to drag and drop this equation thing, put it on the top floor. Now I have a mathematics search engine, and it's going to give me equations because there is something called the BAS model. I want to look at a LaTeX format, MathML format, functional format. I want to know where the provenance is of this equation. Maybe I'm interested in love. Does love intersect with mathematics? What do you guys think? Love and mathematics. Does it intersect? Okay. I clicked too quickly here. Love. Let me go back to mathematics here. Let me put this up here. Do an equation. Hit love and mathematics. Yes, there is an intersection of love and mathematics. But you know, maybe I want to put the Quran up here. I put the Quran here, click it, and now I look at the intersection because maybe I'm an Islamic scholar. I want to see what that looks like in Bengali, for example, how that might change. This is a fly fishing search engine. Our project has certain guidelines. No pornography allowed. We don't allow adult content. With the exception of fly fishing, this is pornography for a fly fisherman right here. All the images that a fly fisherman loves to see. My hobby is fly fishing. What do I want at the top? Fish. I want flies. I want insects, rods, and reels. Here's a pasta search engine. I type in the word Gary, right? And I want to go to, let's say, the images for Gary. That's a chef, right? It makes sense. I'm going to change the pin in the graph with one word, chess. I type that in, and you get Gary Kasparov. A company called Viacom merged with CBS and called a Paramount Group. They have multiple businesses. One's called Paramount Plus, streaming. They also have Paramount Motion Pictures. They have CBS, Black Entertainment Television. What's BET? It's a channel that was sold for $2.5 billion, focusing on the community of African Americans. Poorer communities generally don't invest in search engine optimization. Therefore, their results don't show up in search. So I'm now on the fourth or fifth conversation with the folks at BET to talk about what? How about creating an African American search engine, right? Which centers on their community, because otherwise their community doesn't show up in search results. I type in the word Nina. Do you remember Nina? It was a Canadian actress in Google. You type in Nina, and it's Nina Simone, the famous blues and jazz singer. I type in the word Ben, and you get Dr. Ben Carson, the most famous doctor in America in these days, right? And maybe a Michael Jackson song about a rat called Ben, etc. Here's Iceland search engine. One of the first countries we're going to launch. I type in the word Safna, and you get this images. These are very beautiful women with the word Safna, right? Unfortunately for Icelandic, Safna is an Icelandic word. In Google, you cannot find Icelandic content. This is an Icelandic search engine, and when you type it, you're going to see the image results coming back from Iceland. Again, sorry for the latency here. I don't know what it's churning on right now. There we go. So you'll notice this little girl, Icelandic, Safna means collection. So here's the problem. Icelandic children who want to know about the word collection type Safna. It's not relevant. So you know what they do? They type English. The Icelandic language is dying because you can't find content in your own language on the internet. Because what? It's Google who decides what's on the internet for you. It's not your country that decides, right? Etc. Oh, here's an Indonesian search engine. I'm going to call this the project internally. We have a project name for it. We call it Yabisa or Yabisa or something like that. Okay, and you go, okay, it's centered around the, the culture, the country, etc. In addition, you realize what I've just shown you, style sheets. Wikipedia is a style sheet. Do you agree? It's just a style sheet. A search engine is a style sheet. It's a way of presenting data. A chatbot is a style sheet, right? The same idea. I could put pins in a graph of chatbots and let people generate their own chatbots. This is a question I asked it right before I started here, so I don't know the quality of what just came out here, but I typed in this question here. I don't know if you can see that language up there, but it asks about, I just typed in, tell me about how telcos can potentially use AI. That's what I wrote. In the country of Indonesia, right? That's the pin, Indonesia. And out came something in Bahasa in Indonesian. People have noticed that ChatGPT and other things don't excel at underserved languages. And so the algorithm we use in this case is we find the content that has the highest quality, no matter what the language is. Maybe it's in German. We then find the German answer and then just make sure it's translated back to the appropriate language, whatever that language might be. Here's another example. This is a local newspaper. It's just a style sheet. Local newspapers are dying. Have you noticed that journalists write about tweets? They write about a YouTube post. They write about an Instagram post. Oh my gosh, look what President Trump said yesterday. Let's write an article about it, right? Well, a lot of local newspapers have gone bankrupt in the United States, in France, all over the world, because it's expensive. Have a webmaster, have journalists. So now there's no news. Well, why not create algorithmically a local newspaper for every longitude and latitude in every language of the world? So this is a local newspaper that highlights local events, things that are happening in the local community. What are the most recent sports scores, traffic conditions, what stock, there's a traffic, fishing times, of course, weather, what jobs are being posted, soil conditions, and the like. Why not have a search engine for every company in your country? This was one project we did for a firm, and basically I type in the word loans. I wonder what kind of documentation this company has on this subject area. Often it's very hard to do this, so this is a full-blown search engine centered on a company, and you can see actually all of the different images and things related to what that company has produced associated with that topic or that subject area. Here's chatbots for a company based on each business unit that they sell, each business title people have, each executive within the company, and potentially every customer they've got, fully algorithmically generated. Don't program a chatbot, program an engine that creates chatbots. Therefore, the marginal cost of a chatbot is zero. Right? And that's the world we're kind of moving to. My favorite example I like sharing with people is the following. Do you know how McKinsey and Company and BCG, etc., are very expensive? Super expensive, right? Well, what do those guys do? They talk to you, they repeat what you told them, and then they give you a deck. Sounds formulaic, doesn't it? All right, so why don't we create a little deck for a construction company? And your salespeople, do you guys have salespeople for SMEs and stuff? You always go and say the same thing, upgrade your broadband or something every month. But everybody says in sales, we should see you as a trusted advisor. Have you heard that phrase before? Be a trusted advisor. And then when you ask, what does that mean? You go, well, like McKinsey, they're a trusted advisor. So this is a McKinsey deck, trusted advisor. For those of you who know consulting, it starts very macro typically, and then it goes very micro. This is a construction company in Malaysia, and what you notice, the salespeople will read this deck before they visit the client, so they understand the strategy issues facing the client, right? And maybe they leave it with the client, because why not, right? And so you see it starts as a very macro thing, the economy, what's the sector overview, what's the growth of that sector, what are the big cities in that country, what's the value chain drivers, what are key players, what are future trends going on, What are potential disrupting scenarios? What are growth opportunities? Looks familiar, right? For those of you who've seen these before. Here's a financial analysis of the company and where it might be under leveraged. It also has something called an ESG score, because lending is a function of ESG nowadays. And then you have different ideas of, how a company might want to grow, streamline your processes. Here's the kind of banking products that you might want to need or use, etc. Now, this is for a large company. Why not do it for what? A 3-employee coffee shop. This is Mrs. Hu in Johor Bahru. It's right outside of Singapore. Can a coffee shop afford McKinsey? Probably not, right? But it starts the same way. Here is the overview of the coffee sector. Here's the growth of it. Here are key players. Here are disruptors to the coffee industry. New ways of delivering coffee, maybe new paper for the cups themselves. Here's some growth opportunities. And here's what a 3-person coffee shop can implement. It can implement a digital marketing campaign, a loyalty program, organic coffee lines, an education workshop. Here's the banking products you might want to use as you grow. Here's the specific banking products that might be interesting. And by the way, here's the little office nearest you can walk to and have a more conversation from this company. Here's one for a telecom company. Okay, so imagine a telco goes to a client, i.e. a coffee shop. Okay, and you want to be their trusted advisor. The deck will look kind of the same, right? Kind of the same. But as you get to the end of it, it's going to start talking about different key services that might be interesting for you to implement, right? At the SME level, related to telecom services and products. Here's a different examples you could be, inspired by. Here's a bunch of ideas about digitalization. And oh, by the way, here are the kind of products and services you might want to deliver from a telco, etc. Right? In essence, shouldn't every business have access to this kind of information? So if you make this more publicly available, you're actually affecting the economy at that point, because most SMEs will never have access to this kind of thing. It's just is not feasible. I could go on forever. The amount of opportunity right now in this space is rather huge. You guys heard of Naver in South Korea? A search engine, 80% market share. Yandex in Russia, 80% market share. Shesnam, Czech Republic, 20-30% market share. Baidu in China, 80-90% market share. They had a cool strategy. They got Google banned. Good way to get market share, right? Now, what's that search engine they use in Indonesia again? What was that? Okay, so one idea you may want to contemplate is our lab recently raised enough money to be able to do tech transfer to organizations. This is your fundamental problem. You guys have been on this first curve. Your shareholders want the good old days back, right? They want 4, 5, 6% growth, right? That's what they want. Without a new curve, it's very hard to do that. I'm not sharing. Without a new growth curve, what are your new growth curves going to be? Maybe Gen AI is one of those things. I don't know. We just recently started a tech transfer initiative. We've gone to non-disclosures in 71 companies across 31 countries. This is the first time, this morning is the first time that I presented this to people in Indonesia. That now there's engines that create engines. Before, there's a plant engine. Now there's an engine that writes engines. You don't need 10,000 programmers to launch a search engine anymore, because we have an algorithm that mimics them. Is anybody here in tech? Raise your hands. Anybody here in tech? Okay, we're writing algorithms to replace her. Okay? Or she can be the person who implements this tech, if you know what I mean. And we decided to make it very transferable as a concept. So my lab at INSEAD is doing this now. We're talking to what we call natural owners, media companies, telco companies, large entrepreneurs who think this is a great idea for their language or their country. And so we're starting to see traction. I think the first country this summer we're going to be launching it is in Iceland. Their language is dying right now, and they're so excited about this to get something going. Your country has so much cultural wealth that hasn't been indexed yet. It hasn't been exposed to the planet, even to its own citizens, right? When I showed this to Malaysia, they're like, I didn't know there were all these dentists in Malaysia. Because they were never indexed on the internet, right? Search engine optimization is ignored by content engines. It's the quality of the content that matters, not how well you can game a search engine. So that's where I think the future of this is going. Training large language models is not going to be the big deal. It's engines that create large language models. That's the next horizon. And it's coming very quickly to a theater near you. Okay? This is something that's really, really dynamic right now as a concept. And I think so far I know that I've gotten like 7 or 8 telcos that are really interested in this kind of thing. I think the days of the booms of the telco industry are not over. You're sitting at a nexus. You have an amazing asset base. Holy smokes. No one knows your country better than you at this point. Yet has that been leveraged in one way or another. I see the AI thing as not taking people out of a job. I think there could be major employment opportunities with this, especially as people get enabled with this to expand their portfolio, expand their international reach, etc. I'll give one last story and then I'll stop talking. I love this subject. In Iceland, they realized tourism is their #1 industry. That's it. They also have finance, fishing, and geothermal energy, but tourism is it. They found out they were getting tourists from China, Japan, places like that. And there's no content in Chinese about Iceland. There's no content about Iceland in Bahasa Indonesian. So in fact, they're using the engine not only to do Icelandic language, but they're putting it in 130 languages about Iceland. So they're going to pummel Wikipedia with all these articles in all those languages, but about Iceland. So it's not about your language, it's about people discovering you in their language. And you drive traffic to you in that way. Otherwise, you get an IP transit debt, if you know what I mean. You can get profit by getting people to click to you, if you know what I mean, for termination. So there is a revenue potential here as well, directly by using content engines, making people think about what the greatest place to go on vacation is, but in their language. Because right now, your country is underrepresented on the internet, despite it being one of the largest countries in the world. And content engines, algorithms can maybe fill that gap. Last question maybe. Do we have time for a question or two?
Yes, yes we do.
I'm gonna have to grab a microphone. Can I take this one?
Yeah,
Okay,
okay,
thanks.
thank you, Professor. So I think we do have 2 or 3 questions we can ask the audience, but before, I want to ask one myself.
Yes.
Okay, so you said that the horizon would be engines creating engines, right?
Yes.
As telco companies, we might not have the capabilities to really develop an engine, right? Engine creating engines, but how do you think we can leverage this kind of techs?
Let me give you a story here. Recently, we were asked by a large company to put all of this AI on premises, on-prem. They wanted the source code. They wanted to know exactly what was going on. They didn't want a black box. And they ultimately chose our lab's approach to doing this. They ultimately chose to work with us on this. We've worked with many organizations, the Grameen Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, with the European Union. We worked with many organizations. This was a private sector company. We won the contract, so to speak, but the reason we won it wasn't because of a better, brain or anything. It was because we were the only one that said, we will give you the source code and the training to do it. Because a lot of times people, like vendors, we found out we were up against Google, Microsoft Copilot, McKinsey and Company, and NUS, National University of Singapore. And the McKinsey people, they were asked in the event, I thought you guys did consulting, you don't do engineering. Who does the engineering for this project? And they said, we use a partner, strategic partners. And they said, well, who's your strategic partner? And they said, OpenAI. So McKinsey's become a reseller of OpenAI, right? And they said, okay, that's great. It's an interesting, but can we have the code on-prem? We want your source code behind our firewall. And they go, what? No, we don't do that. Same thing happened with Google, and the same thing happened with Microsoft Copilot. NUS only wanted to do training. So recently, we created this fund that'll allow local companies to license our technology. It requires that the local company pay for the hardware and pay for the bandwidth and all the basic infrastructure. And then if they can get it operating, we then transfer the entire source code already there and do training. So I believe it's about building muscle. That's the trick. And I'll just give you some advice in that regard. I believe, like when you go to a gym and you learn how to build your muscles in your arms, you start with a lightweight first and then you get a heavyweight. So you know those little PowerPoint decks I showed you, the McKinsey in a box decks? That's kind of lightweight stuff, right? Materials for your salespeople, right? Specific chat, lightweight. A little search engine with content, that's kind of lightweight. If you want to go farther than that, do a few implementations first on things that are, doable. So for a telecom company, what we've discovered is that you actually do have a lot of talent, right? But often the time dedicated to the subject is that vendors are often preferred, let me put it that way, because you feel like you have to start from scratch to do it on your own. And I think that's going to change. People are now believing in decentralized technology adoption. That maybe people locally can do things on their own, but they require the education and knowledge to do so. I'm a professor at INSEAD, so Amber and I, our goal is to basically educate people. But often it has to go to a natural owner in a local society, right? Who's the natural owner for a, Yabisa search engine? It's certainly not a professor at INSEAD, right? Other things that we did to make it easier for people to adopt AI, do you know it's unrelated to the computer programming language? You know that, it's unrelated. You can program it in any language, R, Python, whatever. We decided to do the bulk of it in C#, .NET Core. Why? It's the most used language around the world, and it's also free. Therefore, finding people who have the skills to actually operate in this space will be easier from an HR point of view. We wanted to make sure a small country like Rwanda could adopt the technology. So that's how we play that. I don't think you get the same answer from a major vendor, a large big tech company. That wouldn't be their answer. They would say, don't get in this space, we'll take care of it for you. And you'll become an SAP client. And you know what happens after that, right? The switching cost, high or low, off of SAP. Right. And therefore, you're working for them, right? So the idea is to decentralize it. And I believe in the area of content, local expertise, local languages, local community support, all of that matters. The revenue streams are things that are easy to get. B2C advertising, business to consumer, B2B stuff, implementation of Gen AI solutions, B2G, supporting local languages and things. Our lab is overwhelmed with the amount of people who want us to do projects for them right now. There's an appetite for Gen AI, even though it's, 40 years old now, Gen AI, dating back to 1990 or so. It's been around a while, but the appetite has now gone way up. Way up. And the question is, should it be an international vendor or a local vendor who takes care of that? There will be a growth curve. We're just at the beginning of it, right? It's not like the metaverse. It didn't just come and go. It's already been here. It's already being applied. But it's just been popularized right now. So I'd say to answer your question, you need a bit of courage. A little bit of courage. You need to think this may be the next growth curve to get greater market cap for your company. It requires ambition a little bit of ambition. I think you should only do it to swing for the fences. Go for it, really go for it. But start slow, build weight, build muscle first. Don't do it on day one. Maybe spend 3 months learning how the first thing works, then another 3 months, a little bit more. So by the end of the year, boom, you're rocking. That's my personal opinion on how to do it.
Okay, nice. Thank you. Jadi saya akan buka untuk audiens ya. Mungkin kita mulai dari 2 pertanyaan dulu. Mungkin dari teman-teman yang offline, silahkan Pak Richard.
Thank you, Professor Paris Parker. I enjoy your explanation about AI. I wrote down about, you said that don't try to enter the business AI if you don't have a killer apps. So how we do know, how we recognize that we have already killer apps?
Okay, yeah.
And then you said a lot about search engine optimization.
Yeah.
It means that is it okay if we start to build search engine optimization in our local contents? Is it going well, or is already late, or maybe you can do it right now?
Yeah.
This is my first question about that.
Okay.
The second question, how you said that about there are 4 classification.
Yes, 4 types.
Ignore your AI, and then you say that about you can adapt, and then about you can change, and the last one about reserve. How we do know, how we can measure our preparation to enter the AI
Yeah.
according to your 4 classification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's start with the basic thing about killer apps. I never liked the word killer. I like the word profitable. You know, so the idea is that if you can't find an application that either increases revenue or decreases cost or does both at the same time, don't invest. Now that's very broad, right? So you need to go almost application hunting, right? What are the things that are low-hanging fruit that are easy to do? Often it comes from doing a landscaping audit of what already has happened in the world, and then you do a 2x2 matrix, what's feasible and what's impactful. What's feasible for some organizations is different for other organizations. So if your organization has the skill to do it and you can have impact, of course you're going to do those first. Always, you prioritize them, right? Do those first. Whether it's robotics or cognitive, those are means to an end. What you want to find out is what the application is. Then you decide which of the 4 branches to go into, right? If you're doing something like a stock trading app that picks stocks, you don't need a robot part, so drop that. Don't even think about it. If you want to go for stocks, there is rules you have to do. Okay, let's use some rules, rule-based. So the application is typically after the algorithm rather is after the application has been defined. So it's all about the application. What are those applications? To me, applications that don't generate market cap value for your firm are pet projects. And those are dangerous because it uses a lot of resources and doesn't generate economic value. So focus on those where you know there's a proven economic value generated. My estimate right now is big tech extracts roughly $4 to $7 billion of market cap from your country. That's how much market cap is being taken out of your country from advertising and things like that. That's real money. So I would go for things that could double your market cap as an idea, as opposed to the opposite. I'm holding the microphone, so I can't use my hands well. So I'll do it this way. Imagine you have a company that's brick and mortar over here. Do you see this brick and mortar company, like a media company? And they add AI to a brick and mortar company. A media company. You know, they have producers, movie people, and all that, right? Media, newspaper company. And you add AI to a newspaper company. That's like adding a lifeboat to the Titanic. More people will be saved, but that company's going under. Versus starting as a pure AI play and then add people as you need them. Different model completely. Most of the people in the space of AI and tech start with this model. What if it's purely AI and then I add linguists from Bali and linguists from Jakarta and linguists, just what I need to make the model excellent, right? So you almost have to ask yourself as an organization, are we going to pivot into this AI space? Or are we simply going to try to get a little bit more ARPU with an algorithm? Well, Asiata, Excel, they're going to do that too. So wherever you left off, everybody's kind of the same place. So the question is, are there areas where you feel that the databases you have, the CDRs, the EDRs, the cultural information, the reach that your people have, the geographic scope of what you have, these are assets you have that you can leverage from? Question, can we do something in education? Can we do something in finance? Can we do something whatever? And can algorithms help us get there? Often if you're going to do a risky proposition, this is a company called Dun & Bradstreet. I'm stealing their idea. Create a building E. Building E. E is so far down the alphabet, no one's going to notice it. And you make that building dedicated to disrupting your own industry. You put it in people in there that are protected from the rest of the organization, and you let them do crazy stuff. And you create a center of excellence whose job is to what? Increase market value. Either by increasing revenues or dropping costs. Killer apps, little apps here and there, it may be missing a bigger disruption you can be involved in. So many industries are waiting to be disrupted, or you can actually play the disruption game potentially. In your mobile phone industry, you guys remember M-Pesa in Kenya. Remember that?
Yeah.
Serious disruptor. You know? And then something's happened with Alipay and Google Wallet. Those are disruptors. Normal banks are freaking out. What's going on with this Alipay and Google Wallet? What happened, right? Disruptions are happening in your industry all the time, in medicine, education, etc. So I would suggest your management team really brainstorm about that space, what's feasible, what's impactful, and focus on those areas, right? That could be very impactful and very... the second question, so that's the killer app thing. I would go for more killer initiatives, right? Market cap increasing initiatives. What was the second question?
How we decided what the things that we were to enter?
Oh, how do you decide which ones to enter? It depends on the strategic intent of your directors. If the strategic intent of your directors is to lift the economy and therefore lift your revenue, then you go for real big plays, right? What can we do for every business in this country to make their profits go up? You select things based on that agenda if that's what the agenda is. So it's going to be agenda driven. How you decide which initiative to do, it's the ones that fit close, add a third dimension, which ones fit the agenda of the leadership. And if the leadership is to say, our company isn't just selling minutes and data, it's about changing fundamentally or uplifting the economy, well then you shoot for very big initiatives, right? I don't know if your company is putting themselves in that positioning. There's very few companies that can have those kind of ambitions. But you know, in the good old days, the telecom industry was driving economic growth, right? And I don't know if that's over yet. I'm not sure if that's over. But you were a very key component to economic growth in the country. How to choose it? If you don't think your people have the skills, here's the good news. These are very easy skills to acquire. This is not hard stuff. Not hard. It's overblown that you have to be a genius in this area. All of the code is public domain right now. You don't have to invent new algorithms. They're all there. It's about being clever enough to find great opportunities and investing in them appropriately. That's the trick. You know, I have my personal biases of where this is. I'm doing this McKinsey in a box idea. I think it's really good to work on areas that are underserved. Underserved language. This is my bias, okay? Underserved languages. Let's make math books. Underserved companies. Let's do consulting decks, right? Underserved content users. Let's do local search engines, etc. So that's my personal bias about what I would choose. What your firm would choose is really a function of your large agenda goals of the organization. that's usually established at the C-suite and the board and your stockholders, right? That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah. Okay. That's
Thanks
quite,
for the question.
Yeah, that's quite interesting because at Telkom Corporate University we have entrepreneurial initiatives where we fund small squads of people, and I think that better aligns with your perspective, which is more of taking on new AI initiatives to conquer markets from your previous explanation. So I think we have something to work on at Telkom Corporate University from the innovation side. Okay, I think we have one more question. Maybe someone online. Could you please?
Yeah, you'd have to unmute and just shout out.
Okay, this is from Agung Setiobudi. How safe is it if we ask for help from AI with internal information from the company to ask for a need for development of the company, and would there be a potential backdoor of an AI currently?
The question was about the safety of the data
yeah.
information? Okay. As you guys know, you have a data lake, right? And then you typically have a CTO, a Chief Technology Officer, that is a fiduciary relationship with that data, not to let it go out, right? So one of the problems with AI is often people want to do stuff with the data lake and stuff outside the data lake and have the two types of things go back and forth. And that's where you get security issues showing up, right? Traffic going to and from the data lake, right? So our solution that we've done with organizations is we say, well, why don't we put everything behind the data lake, including all the known public information, so it doesn't have to go back and forth. It can stay within the data lake. And that requires you to have the source code and all the algorithms, to do it, right? So that's a challenge, but it is overcomable. The second thing is, often people who want information from a data lake that might be sensitive, they actually don't want the sensitive information. A typical marketing manager doesn't want to know the private data of a customer. What they really want to know is, give me the list of people I can go on sales visits to by priority. Well, that's the output that should come out. That's not private, right? That's not a private thing because it's within the corporation. So normal security works for that. And the trick is, you make a request to the data lake, it does the analysis, it runs all of the APIs, and it runs all of the AI stuff, and then out comes what the manager actually needs. They need a sales deck. That's the output, not raw data. And the raw data never can leave the data lake. It just doesn't, it's not allowed, right? The algorithm doesn't permit such a thing. It has to be controlled. That's the way to keep it safe. One of the problems is regulators, often, especially in financial institutions, do not allow data to transit outside the organization at all. So one project we have right now is we're building out the non-private data, batching it, and then we're transferring it to behind the data lake. So in essence, there's never traffic to and from and mixing private with public data. So there's tactics, I would say, that you need to implement. I believe you need a code of conduct when you do AI. No pornography, no adult things, no this, that, the other. And you simply need to adhere to these pledges, right, to make sure it's true. And if someone violates it, you fire the engineer. It should be down to a person's responsibility. It shouldn't be some vague thing like, let's just be good citizens. That doesn't work. You literally need to have hard pledges that engineers have to follow. These are the rules, and anyone who violates those rules is not allowed to work in our organization anymore, kind of thing. It has to be super strict, down to the engineer. That's where it happens. These problems happen at the engineering end of things. And as your leadership sets up a culture, you make sure that everyone understands the rules of the game. Never do this, because a new person shows up, oh, we could monetize the data, let's sell this on the internet, No, 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 no. It has to be very rigorous, the rules that you play, so that helps the safety component quite a bit. So my advice is make it very rigorous with rules, And then if you need data from outside the internet, have it all collected and then brought behind the firewall on a periodic basis, so all the analysis is behind the firewall, not through the internet. Once you do that, it's very dangerous. Everything is open to everybody once you go in and out of the internet. Very dangerous. So I'd say put it on the data lake as much as you can.
Okay,
Very
so
good. Thanks for the question.
thank you, Professor. So we
Pleasure.
have reached the end of our session today, and we thank you because this is a very insightful session, and I think everyone enjoyed it. I've seen the last numbers of people on Zoom is about 730-ish. So
Word of mouth.
Yeah, you got a lot of viewers today.
Yeah. Well, hello everybody in Zoom land.
Yeah.
I'm glad
Yeah.
you joined us. We have about 40 people here, I think, something like that.
Ya, oke. Jadi Bapak Ibu sekalian, terima kasih atas sesinya pada hari ini. Selanjutnya kita akan ada sesi pemberian souvenir. So we're gonna give you a souvenir. If you may, you can please
Wow, thank
stand
you.
up here. And Pak Arif Hamdani, silakan Bapak. Ya, silakan Bapak bisa naik juga ke atas podium atau di sini ya, boleh.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. Didn't expect this. Thank you very much, everyone. Wow, this is awesome. It's like art. I'm going to put it on the wall. Do people do that? No. Oh, I know. This go on the wall. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Baik.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Ya. Ya, silakan Pak Aram bisa kembali lagi. Oke. Ya baik, terima kasih rekan-rekan semuanya. Jadi pada hari ini kita sudah mendapatkan cukup banyak insight ya yang telah diberikan oleh Profesor Philip. Jadi seharusnya kita sudah lebih melek gitu ya terkait AI gitu, bahwa sebetulnya AI itu bukan barang baru dan memang pada akhirnya itu akan menjadi sesuatu yang biasa gitu ya di masa depan. Nah kemudian tadi sudah diberikan beberapa contoh gitu ya penggunaan AI dan juga horizonnya ke depan seperti apa. Bahwa ternyata AI itu ke depannya horizonnya adalah engine creating engine gitu. Itu akan menjadi suatu hal yang sangat menarik. Dan tentu di sana akan ada apa ya peluang ya buat kita untuk melakukan monetisasi terhadap hal itu gitu. Nah yang perlu dibangun tadi juga disampaikan ya kapabilitas kita jangan langsung ini ya angkat beban yang langsung berat gitu kan. Nah coba kita mulai dari hal yang ringan-ringan dulu gitu kan. Dan tadi juga salah satu closing statementnya adalah bagaimana tadi ya kita mulai menggunakan tim-tim kecil tadi untuk kemudian leveraging AI untuk menaklukkan market gitu. Nah ini juga salah satu pilar ya di Telkom Corporate University yaitu innovation, di mana teman-teman juga kalau punya ide gitu kan bisa kemudian disubmit gitu kan ke kami. Nanti juga itu pasti akan melalui proses manajemen inovasi dan tentu teman-teman juga bisa menjadi bagian dari revolusi AI ini di Indonesia. Baik, terima kasih. Mungkin itu dari saya. Saya mohon maaf jika ada salah kata, salah perbuatan. Terima kasih. Saya kembalikan ke MC.
Alright, once again, let's give a round of applause for Professor Philip and Mr. Hamza. Once again, I would like to express our biggest gratitude to Professor Philip and Mr. Hamza for leading today's Expert Insight agenda. And we truly hope that on today's sharing session, we have gained many valuable knowledge about AI and how to maximize its utilization. Alright, time has flown by and the time has shown that it's currently 3 p.m. Once again, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Professor Philip for gracing today's Expert Insight event with his presence, as well as to the crew and team involved. On behalf of the entire team, I, Beatrix Vena, would like to extend our gratitude to all attendees and apologize for any misspoken words or actions. Stay healthy and see you in the next episode of Expert Insight. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bapak Ibu rekan-rekan yang ada di ruangan, tolong jangan keluar dulu karena kita foto bersama semuanya ya. Mohon untuk tidak meninggalkan ruangan sejenak. Ya. Mas Alwi ready? Oke. Ya. Bu Ambar, maaf sebelumnya, ini peserta yang lain pengen foto, kita coba foto sama-sama. Nah, ya, jadi kita kayak rame-rame foto dengan profil. Ntar ya, saya koordinasi dengan tim foto. Selain berdua, untuk kerekan, silakan ke sebelah sini. Barangkali Prof. Kemudian silakan rapat di sebelah sini, profnya dari sebelah sini, oke. Silakan merapat lagi, yuk. Cukup nggak? Coba-coba, kelihatan? Oke. Aku pose komando ya. Gini. Kelihat. Nah, boleh barangkali di depan mas-mas yang nah, itu kayak kita. Nah, gitu boleh di depan bar on frame semuanya. Boleh mas yang belakang sini ke depan lagi, ya biar terabadikan namanya. Oke, silakan merapat lagi. Ya, yang belakang silakan bergabung. Pertama kita akan pose komando ya, seperti ini, tangannya dikepel. Nah, seperti ini. Ya, komando pro. Ya. Oke. Oke, seperti ini. Ya, siap. Tahan senyumnya. Silakan. Oke, kemudian do it in your hand. Oke. Ya, ini ya. Oke. Terima kasih semuanya. Terima kasih. Ya, silakan pada saat keluar kita sudah sediakan snack di luar. Silakan mengambil snacknya dan sekali lagi terima kasih yang sudah bergabung di Expert Insight Hybrid hari ini. Sampai